I think I've had a few great moments in choir in this generational choir, though. Just I mean, look how I'm dressed.
Yeah, all sorts of great moments, musical and otherwise, for sure.
Yeah. We almost filmed this episode in a very special place. We almost did it at Disneyland, which I think would have been really fun. I think the audio would have been sort of hell to do, but it would have been Disneyland, so it would have been cool. But yeah. I guess my first question is the same question I ask every teacher: is what do you want for your students, and what do you want from them?
What I want for my students is for them to feel like they both have a sense of what they would like to have happen next, whether that be more schooling, some sort of a job, a combination of the two, or something other than that, and for them to feel like their time at Chaffey and their time with me specifically has helped them in some way to clarify that next step and to achieve that next step. What I want from them is their trust and energy and buy-in to the extent that they can offer those precious resources. The more that my students are willing and able to engage with the work and engage with me, the more, from my point of view, they get out of their time with me, and certainly the more I enjoy and get out of my time with them.
I think that's the most straightforward answer I've gotten from a teacher so far. And I think you do a fairly good job at your goals, and I think your students try their best as well. I've sort of talked to you about this before. Well, I guess not talked, but it was in my letter. But your teaching style is fairly different from a lot of directors, musical directors out there. At least the ones that your students have had. Not just me, but we've talked about it ad nauseum. That it's you're very patient, I guess, and you choose your words very wisely. Has that ever been intentional for you? Is that just how? I think that is it. Just how you are.
I think it's just how I am. I think that's a charitable interpretation of the fact that even though I'm pretty smart, I'm not that fast. So I don't think I could be impatient or thoughtless with my words, even if I wanted to. So I guess I'm lucky or privileged in that regard, that being calm and thoughtful is kind of the only option I have most of the time.
I love that, though. It's a good feature as a musical director. I think we've all talked about how before your sabbatical, we all had a sort of meeting in 111, and we all sat down. And we're like, this is gonna be it for a while with Dr. Rentz, except if we have you on Sundays. Some of us have you on Sundays, and we were all talking about how it's probably like good to savor the last few moments we had, or a few classes we had with you. And I've sort of worked with you for you, and as also been your students in a few different institutions, I guess you could say. And I've sort of had a peek into what you do outside of Chaffey, which is a lot of stuff. And I sort of have a feeling that I've had a peek into what my future could also look like, just because I also love to keep busy and all that. And if I wish to keep going the way that I am, I think it's going to be fairly similar to what you're doing now. And you keep very busy. I mean, last December, there was a week where I saw you on a Wednesday for a Claremont thing that you were a Claremont concert that you were subbing in for, And then I think Thursday we had dress rehearsal here at Chaffey, and then the Friday we had a performance at Chaffey, and then the Saturday I got called in to sing at Whittier, which I saw you again because you were also subbing in for your wife. And then Sunday we had church in the morning, which is a lot of stuff to be in charge of. I've always wondered if that's always how you've been, since I guess you could categorize our careers as sort of an extracurricular, so you kind of always have to be doing more. I don't know a lot of musicians who just have one job. It's a gig economy for a lot of creative people, and I was wondering if that's always how it's been for you, and do you think it's more of a passion or a necessity for a musician to work in this way?
It's a good question. The span that you cite was unusually busy, even by my standards. I do not always have quite that much going on, but it does happen like that sometimes. I would say there's a combination of factors. Some of it is inherent in who I am and who I've always been. Even though I just talked about not being quick, I also school from elementary school all the way through. Some aspects of school were always easy enough for me that I was left with a fair amount of time and mental energy and space. For most of my earlier childhood, that was just taken up by reading books. I was a voracious reader through middle school, and in high school I did the high school equivalent of what my adult life is like, there was full load of classes, including 0 hour before school, no study halls, a million extracurriculars, from theater to math club to student journalism to the computer science competitions to you name it. I did it. Some sports, just kind of a lot of everything.
Wow.
These days, well, becoming a professional musician and music educator at the beginning of my and one's career, the advice is to default to saying yes to any opportunity you have, because you never know if you'll get another one. And I certainly did that at the beginning of my career, and I think that has persisted as a mindset to some extent, even though it's not financially necessary. My full-time professorship at Chaffey compensates me well, and I don't need other paying work the way I did for many, many years. But it's still really hard for me not to say yes to an opportunity that is even marginally appealing, although I have gotten a little bit better about that. There have been very few times in my life when I have chosen to give up a gig that I liked, except when I moved to a different city. So that's something to work on. Like there's not saying yes. That's the first level, and then there's actually saying I like this and I don't really need to be doing it right now, and that's a goal for the future.
Have you found that your sabbatical has helped at all in sort of finding peace and a break?
I'm certainly there were people who predicted that I would have a hard time not being at Chaffey, and I do miss my students very much, and especially since so many of my excellent and favorite students are finishing this semester. But I don't at all miss doing the job as such.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find myself wishing I were here doing this particular work. I'm also not dreading coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the sabbatical is functioning the way it should in that regard. Even though I'm keeping busy with all sorts of things, it also feels very much like a break.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say I don't think it will ever be my goal to have one job and do it. I'm too interested in too many different things,
Mm-hmm.
both musical and otherwise.
Have you ever read The Bell Jar?
I have, although a long time ago.
I think it's been a second for me as well, but there's an analogy in there of like the fig tree of I think the main character was feeling too much like she could branch out into too many careers, and it kind of left her frozen. Did you ever have that moment of was it always music?
It was not always music. When I went to Washington University in St. Louis as an undergraduate, which is a medium-sized liberal arts institution, and I had a kind of scholarship that required me to major in something in the humanities.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that was in my future, although I could have double majored in something else if I'd chosen to. But no, I went in having no idea what I wanted to do as a career. My father was a lawyer. My mother worked as a librarian for many years, then transitioned briefly into being a fine artist, and then ultimately into social work and individual counseling. I've got a lot of lawyers and librarians in my family, as well as various other sorts of professionals. And I just found myself doing more and more music, and that eventually, I would say it revealed itself to me as my profession. I don't think I ever felt frozen. Okay. Although I think I explored what to major in maybe in a somewhat passive way. I just took the classes I was interested in and figured it would sort itself out. I think that still remains the ethos when one goes to a kind of elite or higher ranked liberal arts institution. They still, at least to some extent, don't present themselves as purely pre-professional. So I think that the class the single class I would say that I was best at in my undergraduate, I'd say there were two. I would say it was my first semester of music theory and microeconomics.
Oh, I was pretty okay at microeconomics.
And I loved both of those classes. Yeah. I loved them.
Yeah, I think I did mine. It was an AP class though during COVID, so it wasn't ideal. But when did you start conducting?
I started conducting a little bit in high school. I became rather a leader in our extremely robust choral program in my junior and more so in my senior year. I composed a piece the summer between my junior and senior year that my concert choir performed my senior year. And my teacher there, who was and remains my single greatest mentor and inspiration, gave me the opportunity to lead a small ensemble of, I think they were freshmen and sophomores, in preparing a piece for a music festival, a little madrigal by, or maybe canzona by Vecchi, I think, O Occhi Manza Mia. So yeah, that was my first conducting experience. Did more in college, both kind of student-led, like I started a madrigal group, and I also music directed a couple of student-produced musicals. Wow. But I worked as the worked as the assistant or student conductor for the chamber orchestra and the main choir there as well.
Wow. So you've been doing that for like a while now.
I have
Conducting.
in some sense been conducting for 30 years.
And I was wondered, since I also sort of started conducting. I think the first time was when I was 14, and being 14 and being such a huge fan of fantasy novels and I was also a big reader when I was younger and sort of now, but I've always sort of seen conducting as a sort of, there's something magical about it, and it's, I think, as a human, I think it's the closest thing we have to wielding magic. I mean, you either use your hands or you use a baton, which is the closest thing we've got to a magic wand. And I was wondering if a part of you ever had that sort of romanticism when it comes to conducting or music, where there's just something there that you can't really explain.
I have that feeling when making music as a conductor and also as a performer, mostly as a singer, but sometimes as a pianist as well. Although I also am a fan of magic and or fantastical fiction, I never had that particular association. I think for me, it's maybe almost the opposite, that it has almost felt like when it's going well, it's the most human thing that I do or that anyone can do. I think in part because my great music making experiences are always collective. They're always ensemble based. I think a pianist, a solo instrumentalist is going to have a very different feeling. But for me, music is always about connection to my fellow humans.
Yeah, I think when I started studying as a solo bassoon player, whatever, when I was doing piano when I was a kid, I really hated it because I was just on my own practicing, and it just didn't feel the same. When I came into choir for the first time, I thought it'd be really different from when I was in bands and ensembles from before, but there's just a sort of magic to it for me, I guess. But yeah, I've always wondered what other conductors feel when they're conducting. Yeah, and I've worked with a few now, so it's always, great to hear their thoughts on that. I don't know if we have time for this, but it's a stupid idea that I had right before I fell asleep, but I downloaded an old video of me conducting at 16, and I wanted to show it to you and see what you're... Okay. Yeah, it's, have you ever been to a marching band competition?
Nope.
It's fairly different from what we do in choir. If you can see, that's me on the podium in white, little tiny 16-year-old China.
Down at the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you press play,
so before I do, well, I'll say I was in band all 4 years in high school, but we didn't have a marching program. So I'm pretty unfamiliar with the marching culture in general, and the color guard and with competition in particular.
A lot of kids think that say that it's like musical theater, but combined with ROTC, with how we do rehearsals.
Perhaps like being in the chorus of musical theater.
Yeah,
certainly nothing like being a principal in musical theater.
Yeah.
I think. So tell me what conducting down there on that podium, what are people watching you? What effect are you having? So
I think it might be about 10 feet off the ground. The marching band who's in front of me would have to look at me for tempo. Most of the time I'm looking at the center snare drum for their feet to get an accurate tempo for everyone. And I don't know, my job was just to wave my arms around and try not to look too stupid.
So in theory, are the folks who are the farthest out to the side supposed to be getting their tempo from you rather than from what they're hearing?
Yes, because there's a lot of echoes and
Right, there's an actual distance for the sound to cover. And do you find that is that actually the case when it's functioning?
Yeah,
Right.
sometimes. When everyone is doing their job properly and looking at the drum major, I think that's supposed to be the effect. I think this particular one was our finals, like championships. I think we got like 11th place or something. It was a pretty horrifying year, but I think we had fun, and I definitely had fun doing
And
it.
is this a rehearsal or a performance that I'm looking at?
That's a performance.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you want to press play at any time. I don't know how to do this. Oh, I think there should be music. Yeah, there you go. Ah, God.
You took your hat off.
Uh-huh. So it's difficult to conduct.
Because you're worried about it falling off?
That, and I get migraines for it, and it's you just have to do it.
So everyone always takes their hat off?
I think it depends on the school, and also depends on the school how long your salute is. Ours was very traditional, so I kept it very short.
So is it always at these sort of competitions and performances, is it always a student conductor?
Yes. Actually, Cheeto Hills was the only school that I remember having their band director conduct, which was odd. Oh, that's Johnny. That's on the timpani.
Very good.
Yeah.
Is it always the case? Does the director lead for much of the process, and then the student steps in at the end?
We are there for the whole year. We are on the podium. Usually they're on microphones and telling us which movements to go through. But usually we have marching instructors, but the drum major usually is the one pacing the rehearsal. Even music rehearsals as well. Sometimes we're just standing and playing, but yeah. We're usually just there to supervise most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like a little like some types of, say, orchestral performances where the conductor does have a role in keeping things together in performance, and also has their own performative role for the benefit of the audience. Something for the audience to look at, to know what's happening, or just a place for the audience to rest its focus.
Yeah. Most of my job was off the field. I'm not gonna lie. Some of it was conducting, but most of it, 10% of it was conducting. The rest was leadership.
And that tends to be true of conducting jobs in any kind of school or academic setting.
And I believe this is the performance where our microphones gave up halfway through. And so our soloists, we had a brilliant violinist, and the microphone for him just gave up, which was very sad at the moment, but we had a great time.
Yeah, and your conducting seems clear and expressive.
I was told to use my whole body. I'm very much jumping around.
And you do that at times,
yeah.
I think, without ever feeling like it's out of control.
Tried.
Yeah. It's, the different types of ensemble conducting require different skills, different types of energy. The only thing that they all require is staying in the moment and also a little ahead of the moment at the same time. And sometimes a little behind the moment as well, especially in rehearsal. Do you feel like you were able to hear, see, and assess what was going on as you're conducting?
I mean, it's been a while. For that specifically, I don't think I could really see anything because of the adrenaline that's going through. I think my job was just to keep going and hope that my body knows what to do next.
Yeah.
But in C5 or in I used to do a little bit of for wind ensemble, little conducting moments there. I think I was more present.
Yeah, keep it, for me, it's been and remains an ongoing process of really being able to keep my ears open while I conduct. And not superimposing what I think it should sound
hearing
like.
What you want to.
Like, I'm very good at fixing intonation issues in my brain.
I think so.
Which isn't so helpful when reading.
I think my role was more theatrical than anything, but it was fun.
Yeah, it feels and looks both theatrical and functional.
How would you rate that on a scale of like lame to epic?
Well, I don't have anything to compare it to, so I would have to say epic.
Slay. Okay. That was the last thing I had to ask you about. And, you know, we kind of talked about it a little bit, or you kind of talked about it a little bit about when you do come back to choir, it's going to be fairly different with 8 of us about to graduate. And I know I don't just speak for myself when I say that we've very much enjoyed our time in chamber choir, and a lot of us, as you know, didn't come into Chaffey as music majors, and we are leaving as music majors. So that's always, I think I told you that's pretty much a great thing for a teacher to have.
I take it among other things, a high compliment. Yeah. Sure.
And I think the whole point of this podcast was for this semester was to sit down with teachers of mine, past and present, and just thank them because I'm about to probably most likely leave.
You're going somewhere.
I'm going somewhere. Hopefully, one of the 16 schools take me.
I feel confident that you will go somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
on that we'll see. But this has been one of, if not my favorite, choir generations here at Chaffey.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this with me. I know it's you have a busy schedule, and
I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, finally. I think it's been like 3 semesters or 2 semesters. Yeah. Yay.
All right.
Thank you for. Bye.
Thank you, China. And thank you.